The blizzard had been raging for 2 days when Tobias heard the desperate pounding on his cabin door. Up here in the Montana wilderness, visitors were rare enough in summer, but in the dead of winter they were practically unheard of. He grabbed his rifle by instinct, approaching the door with the caution that had kept him alive through 15 hard years in these mountains. When he pulled it open, the wind nearly ripped it from his hands. 2 figures collapsed onto his floor in a cascade of snow and freezing air. They were native women. That much he could see immediately. The older one, perhaps in her 30s, struggled to her feet, pushing back her frost-covered hair. She held up her hands, showing she carried no weapons, and spoke in broken English. "Please, we need help. My sister." She gestured to the younger woman still crumpled on the floor, and that's when Tobias saw it. His breath caught in his throat and he stood frozen, unable to process what his eyes were telling him. The younger woman's doeskin dress was soaked with blood. Her face was contorted in agony, and as she shifted, Tobias saw her swollen belly. She was heavily pregnant and clearly in labor. The older sister knelt beside her, speaking urgently in their language, then looked up at Tobias with eyes full of terror and desperation. "Baby coming. We had nowhere else to go. The fort, they would not help us. Please." Tobias's mind reeled. He'd left civilization behind specifically to avoid complications like this. He was a trapper, a loner, a man who dealt with animal pelts and survived on his own terms. He knew nothing about childbirth, nothing about medicine beyond basic wound care. His hands shook as he stared at the 2 women, one pleading, one writhing in pain on his floor. Every instinct told him to refuse to send them away, to protect himself from this responsibility, but he couldn't. The younger woman cried out, a sound of pure anguish that cut through his hesitation like a knife. Tobias slammed the door against the wind and moved into action. "Get her by the fire," he commanded, his voice steadier than he felt. He pulled blankets from his bed, grabbed the cleanest cloth he had, and set water to boil. The older sister helped move her sibling closer to the warmth, whispering words of comfort. "What's your name?" Tobias asked, needing something, anything, to ground him in this surreal moment. "I am Kimimela. This is my sister Winona," she said, her own hands trembling. "Our village soldiers burned it 3 days ago. Everyone scattered. Winona's husband, he was killed. We ran into the mountains, but the baby, it comes too soon." The hours that followed were the longest of Tobias's life. He'd faced grizzly bears, survived avalanches, endured winters that killed weaker men, but nothing had prepared him for this. Kimimela guided him as best she could, but she was terrified too. Winona's screams filled the small cabin, mixing with the howling wind outside. Tobias's rough, calloused hands, used to skinning animals and chopping wood, now worked with desperate gentleness. Following Camilla's urgent instructions, when the baby finally came, slipping into Tobias's trembling hands in a rush of blood and fluid, he thought his heart might stop. The infant was tiny, impossibly fragile, and for one terrifying moment silent. Then the cry came, weak but persistent, and Tobias felt tears streaming down his bearded face. He'd never heard a more beautiful sound. He wrapped the baby in his cleanest shirt and handed the child to Winona, who clutched her daughter with the fierce desperation of a mother who'd lost everything else. Kalema collapsed in relief, and Tobias sat back against the wall, his whole body shaking. Outside, the blizzard continued its assault, but inside the cabin, there was warmth and the sound of a newborn's cries. Winona looked at him through exhausted tears and whispered, "Thank you. You saved her. You saved us both." Tobias realized in that moment that he'd been wrong about isolation. For 15 years, he'd believed that avoiding people meant avoiding pain. But looking at this new life, this tiny miracle born in his cabin during the worst storm of the decade, he understood something profound. Sometimes the greatest courage wasn't in facing nature's fury alone. It was in opening your door when someone knocked and choosing compassion over comfort, in letting yourself be changed by the desperate needs of strangers who became something more.